Hello, and welcome to this session of the 2021 online KBHC experience, an offering of Cormont music and our gift to the horn community. In this session, we feature Patrick Hughes, horn soloist, composer, arranger, and associate professor of horn at the University of Texas at Austin. I'm your moderator, Elizabeth Simmons, Eastman doctoral student, horn faculty at the Eastman Community Music School, and freelancer. This is my cat, Chloe. Before we jump into this session, a few Zoom housekeeping items. So that we may be able to hear the presentation, we've muted all participants. Please stay muted for the duration of the session unless one of our presenters asks you to unmute. If you click on participants at the bottom of the screen, you should be able to see a participant list pop up with your name at the top. If the name associated with your Zoom account is different from your own first and last name, please click on the blue More button next to your name, select Rename, and enter your first and last name. This will help us know who it is we are communicating with. If you click on Chat at the bottom of the screen, you should see the chat box appear. Comments posted in the chat are affected by the drop-down menu above the text box. Depending on your selection, your comments may be viewed by everyone or by individual participants. Each time that you enter a comment into the chat, please double check your selection so that your comment is seen by your intended audience. And with that, I'll hand the session off to Pat.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Thank you very much for being here. Hello, everyone, and welcome to my class today. I hope you're all getting a lot out of the KBHC online experience. And of course, I always want to give a special shout out to the staff because they are truly amazing with everything that they do behind the scenes and all the work they did before this week actually happened. So, patting you guys on the back. Way to go. All right, so today, the name of my talk is Let's Talk About Your Sound. And it's interesting because when I first turned the title in, I was thinking about let's talk about your sound. But then I put your in like capital letters, and all of a sudden I kind of changed what I was thinking I would talk about. So my whole talk kind of just changed a little bit because of that. But I like it where it is now, and so that's cool. So let's talk about your sound. So today I'm going to talk about the magnificent, precious, proud, sinister, sad, exuberant, and joyful sound of the horn. How about that? First thing we're going to do is have a brainstorm session, and I want you guys to put your answers in the chat. And I'm just going to give you a cue, and I want you to put them all in, and we'll all be looking at all the words like going across, and I think that will actually be kind of fun. But we're gonna have a brainstorm session and talk about words that we used, that we tried to use to talk about the quintessential horn sound. And then we'll talk about factors that I think contribute to a horn sound, and most of those should be review for many of you. And I will also talk about the words core, the word balance, and the word control, and how those words fit into my definition of a great horn sound. And following that, we'll address the art of listening. And it's a section I'm calling Have You Listened to Yourself Lately? And I'll cover different ways that you can listen to your sound and work on your sound in your daily practice. And last, and certainly but not least, we'll talk about your sound, your voice, and playing from the heart. All right, so onward. Let's get on with this activity. So what I want you guys to do right now is, if I say, think of the best horn sound, French horn sound, what word or 2 words or 3 words would you use to describe an amazing, great horn sound? Oh, so fun. Look at all these going by. Oh, there are lots of colors. I like that. Sharp, warm, shimmer, vocal, round, mellow, round, warm, velvet, heroic, shimmer, warm, rich. Oh, clear and vibrant, rich and dark. Isn't that funny? Shine, heroic, powerful, chocolate. Yay, chocolate. I love that. All right. Okay, stop that one. Now, I want you to put words in your chat that describe your own sound. And don't worry, we're going to flip through these, so you don't have to bare your whole soul, but words that you would say that describe your sound. toothy. Characteristic, farty. Oh, interesting. Very good. Tentative. So lots of more negative words. Isn't that funny in there? But we see some of the same words. That's good. Tense and tight. I see that. I hear that a lot these days. Too dark. Thanks, Europe. Chris, it can never be too dark. That's what I think. So that's great. Okay, we'll stop this. Now we're gonna put in words that describe the character of a sound in certain pieces of music. So the first one I'm going to think about, I want you to think about, is the D calls in the Don Juan. Ba yum ba dum ba ba bum ba. What's the character of that sound? Fat, brilliant, heroic, regal, majestic, bold, soaring, arrogant. I love that. Bravado, proud, energetic, excellent. Okay, let's switch to the tutti low horn section from Shostakovich 5. Menacing, terror, scary, sinister, powerful. Sinister, I think, is my favorite one. This is a word that always comes to me. Dark, yeah. It's dark yet it's brassy, isn't it? It's so evil, I think. It's just evil. Inevitable. That's good. Oh, Elizabeth, thank you for being here. Okay, and what about this one? Here's the third one. The Pavan. Ravel Pavan, or you could also think of maybe Princess Leia's theme from John Williams. Flowers, sweet, beautiful, sweet, yeah. Or resignation. Michael, that's deep. Pure, light, French, oh, that's good too. Gentle. All right, awesome. So we can see that there's a zillion kinds of words that describe the sound of the horn, and there's so many. Velvet, yes, that's very good, David. I like that too. Lyrical? Oh, lyrical, sure. Human. Oh, these are so good. I need to like capture all these and put these down. But so lots of words. Okay, so now the next thing we're gonna do is, without being negative, we're attempting to be objective here. What words come to mind when describing the sounds of these often recorded horn players? So the first one I'll throw out there is Dennis Brain. So objective words about their sounds. Yeah, lots of light and bright. Yeah, accurate. Clear and articulate. Too much B flat. Oh, David, you crack me up. Okay, that's good. Okay, what about Barry Tuckwell? How is that different? What words come to mind when you think of Barry Tuckwell's sound? Larger, alive, out there. Texture. Well, that's interesting. I like that. And here's the last one. How about the 8D sound of Phil Myers? He's not often recorded as a soloist, but what about that? What about that sound? Rich, big, wide, strong, full. Yep. Duck and cover. He can certainly play loud. That's true. Lots of vibrato. Yeah, he does play with vibrato. Yeah, those are all great. Yep. Yes, he kind of sound changed a little bit when he switched to the Schmidt, didn't it? But it's still that same sound, I think, same rich sound. Awesome. So, in conclusion, I would have to say that there are just too many words. There are too many words that we can think of that describe the sound of the horn. If you've ever read Fergus McWilliams' book, Blow Your Own Horn, there's the very first part of that book, he lists like all these words that can be used to describe the French horn sound. And on the next page, like, is the opposite of all of those? You can, if you think about it, all those words could be used to describe the horn sound as well. Very, very interesting. I love that book, and I'm going to bring Fergus up in a little bit later too. But so that's really awesome, Pat. Great conclusion. There's too many words, and so we can't really truly define what the horn sounds like. Great. Way to go. Okay, the speech is over. No. But so what makes a sound great? I remember that things that my teachers said to me about that. Many of them talked about having a consistent sound or a central core to my sound that would be my, go-to sound or something that I always strive for. Um, one of my teachers talked about it as a ribbon of sound that's like this thick, and this thickness of the ribbon is my core, and that my job as I played long tones that got louder and softer was to make sure that the ribbon always stayed the same width, and that it didn't thin out when I got really soft, and that the sides didn't get frayed when I got too loud. So that was one way someone talked about developing my core. I had another teacher talk about a ball that was magically suspended at the end of my bell, and now we can use the image of a snitch just sitting there. And that my job was to blow a wind stream, an airstream that made the ball spin. And I should be able to control how fast it spins and how slow it spins, and also change the size of the ball, or the hardness of the ball, from baseball to softball to even a mush ball. And so those are all interesting, and I used those things and thought about that. And I think that when we talk about the core of your sound, these are all the things that factor into your sound, like your embouchure strength, your embouchure setup, your posture, as I mentioned. I will mention in the future. Feels like I mentioned it in the past, but I did say it to someone this morning. Your hand position is really important when you're developing your core of sound. Is it really consistent in where you want it? Is your throat open or closed? Is it a relaxed throat or a tight throat? I like to think of those words instead of open and closed. Your oral cavity, what's the shape of it? That determines what your core sound is. Your tongue position, and we know, like from Eli Epstein, that the tongue position can change a lot depending on what range we're in. How much tension you're carrying in your neck can control the sound, or affect the core. Your shoulders, your arms. That's why I believe 100% in breathing low, breathing down into that pelvic floor, and using that tension to play from rather than tension up here. And honestly, so I had those are all things that factor into core. There's probably a lot more. But as a student, I think I was just trying to make a good sound. I just wanted to make a good sound on everything, and I found a sound or a core that pleased me. And I really didn't consider it much further than that, even though my teachers were telling me about the ribbon and the ball and all that kind of stuff. I'd say that I was just trying to sound like myself. That was my pursuit. Honestly, that isn't much of a pursuit, because everyone kind of liked my sound and didn't really criticize it. But in retrospect, I would say the main word in my head that I used for my sound was the word warm. I played in the pocket of warmness, whether I was playing forte or piano or fortissimo or pianissimo. Also, in retrospect, I avoided playing anything that didn't sound warm to me, anything technical, anything low, anything that required lots of flexibility, because I didn't like not sounding good in the practice room. I learned later on that that's the key to actually practicing great. But I was in my own little warm world as a student, and I perpetuated that every day, and that was my core sound. And I played with it, and I could play an orchestra, and I could play loud and soft. I wasn't very good at playing brassy. I was playing an AD at the time, and I'll blame the AD, but actually afterwards, later on, I figured out how to play brassy on that too. But I kind of stayed in that warm thing until one summer, I just found myself taking lessons with Phil Myers. Here we are for 2 weeks at the Grand Teton Orchestral Institute, which I don't think exists anymore. And Phil said, after I played for him, he said, your sound is balanced. And for me, that was like the first time someone had ever criticized my sound. And balanced, I mean, some people could take that as a compliment, but for me, I was like, what? Balanced? And I think what he was talking about was that I had an ability to find the right balance between my airspeed and my aperture or buzz, and the vibrating horn in my hands, which was providing some sort of resistance to blow against. And those three factors each contributed to my sound, and none of those sounds were gross or offensive. And so I think that was balanced. And I think you all know what I'm talking about. It's like that feeling when you get to a note and like a certain note on the horn where it just feels like you don't have to try. like there's a perfect balance. You just play and there's this beautiful sound, and you can play notes around it that sound crappy, but when you get to that note, it just sounds great. It's a very friendly note in the middle of your register where everything just sounds great. You don't have to try. And a note that your horn likes a lot or always responds the same way. And having a magical sound, I think, has to do with creating a balance on every note. And as Phil Myers pointed out to me, I had to be able to not only do that, make a balanced sound on every note, but I had to be able to do something with it, make music with it on purpose, like connect the dots, so to speak. And this is control. That's my third big word. So my first big word was core, and then balance, and now control. And controlling the sound so that the sound that I wanted to come out of the horn is still a challenge for me and still something I think about. And the revelation of control and playing with my balanced sound honestly changed the way I thought about the horn. And so thank you, Phil Myers. You changed it in 2 weeks. It was amazing. I will also say that we have many teachers, and sometimes we are just in the right place at the right time to hear the right words that the right teacher is saying. Because after I met Phil Myers, I suddenly understood way more about the ribbon of the sound, and I understood the spinning snitch and all that kind of stuff. So it was it just like all of a sudden it made sense to me. And so as I started working with that, I realized that there's actually more than one balance. And to create a balance, you need those three things I already mentioned. You need a horn that's going to vibrate, you need a buzz that works, and you need control of the airspeed. The horn contributes to the sound. Different horns will react to different kinds of people blowing, depending on how they blow. And if you play a Crespi rap and went to play a Geyer, you will definitely see, or vice versa, how that really affects the sound. And it's like, what? And practice is important to get better, yes, but practice also gives us time to become acquainted with the horn that's in our hands, to see how the instrument's going to respond. So hours and hours of practicing isn't necessarily working on stuff, but it's about you getting acquainted and figuring out what the horn can do or what the horn won't do, and what we're going to have to do to make the horn sing or sound balanced in certain areas. I remember a long time ago someone used to say that you have to play, you got to break that horn in for a couple months, and really the horn is just a piece of metal. I'm breaking me in onto that horn. Okay, so the horn contributes to the sound. And then the other two, the aperture or the buzz, creates a symbiotic relationship with the air, right? With the speed of the air, and that contributes to the sound. And being able to move and change the aperture inside the mouthpiece allows us to move and change the airstream direction or speed, and vice versa. So they work together. If you have too tight of an aperture, it won't allow the air to flow through efficiently. If you have too slow of an airspeed, you won't be able to make the edges of the aperture vibrate and make a good buzz, depending on how big or small your aperture is. And it's the motion of the airspeed that spins the ball or makes the core. It's the motion of the airspeed moving through the buzzing lips. And you can affect the motion of the air with pushing or letting, regulating, and allowing it to pass through the aperture, depending on how supple the aperture is. All of those balances between the three, the horn, the aperture, and the airstream, oh yeah, don't forget that, make up the entire sound palette of colors that the horn can play. And so to create a different balance sound that's louder, the air has to be faster and the aperture has to just give a little bit more so that the faster air can go through. And that's what keeps everything in balance. It's sort of like driving a stick shift or something, how you have to release the clutch. I could never do that, but you know what I mean. So it's the motion of the air moving across a malleable and supple aperture into the vibrating horn that makes the sound. And there, as I said before, there are many balances, not just one. And those balances happen by exploring the relationship between the buzz and the air, moving from brassy in and out of brassy. All of those can be balanced sounds if you're in control of the sound and you're making the sound that you really want. You are playing the horn. The horn is not playing you. So, a great horn sound can have many colors, and a great horn sound comes from a player with a balanced core sound and ability to control the sound as they move through the many colors, ranges, and volumes with intent. Yes, driving stick. That's what I meant when I was saying before the entire orchestra will honk and curse. That's good, Ben. So it's not just blowing on the horn. It's about control of the blowing. So here I'm bringing Fergus McMillan back in here. So he says, don't think of moving the air as if it were like lifting some sort of heavy inert weight. Good blowing is not some kind of athletic exercise. Rather, it is to keep the air in motion, whether quickly in forte or slowly in piano dynamics. It is this motion that provides the necessary compression that equals sound. I love Fergus McWilliam, and I love that book. If you haven't read that book, Blow Your Own Horn, go read it. It's great. It kind of makes fun of everything we teachers tell the students, but that's why I love it so much. So, working on sound for some of us is the most difficult thing to do on the horn because it's so subjective, isn't it? And if we hear other horn players around us, we listen to recordings, we go to concerts, but in the end, it's just us in the practice room, where it's much easier to work on more immediate things like correct notes and dynamics, or perfecting a lip trill, or getting a tonguing passage correctly. It's very easy to neglect our sound and just take the sound that we're making for granted. But you actually can improve your sound if you pay more attention to it. There are other things besides long tones to help make that change happen. Although playing long tones is always a good thing to do, of course. You have to change how you think about your sound, and you have to move it up in your priority list to the top to make this happen. Your amazing sound has to be the reason you take the horn out of case every day. And I think a lot of people take the horn out every day because the horn makes an amazing sound, but I don't think they take it out because it's your amazing sound. You have to flip the listening switch in your head and start practicing a little bit differently. So this middle part, I've organized this part of the talk under general headings taken from nagging directives we often hear from our parents, as well as ones I mysteriously found myself saying to my own kids. The name of this part is, Have You Listened to Yourself Lately? And all of the subheadings are meant to be said and thought of in an exasperated tone, as if the parent-teacher has told you these things countless times before, and believe me, we have. Nothing today should be anything you haven't heard of in some fashion before. You just weren't listening to us when we told it the first time. So for each section, I'll speak about things and then demonstrate exercises or talk about exercises that you can do in your daily practice to work on it. The exercises are simple, and it's mostly about changing how you listen and how you think about your sound. So anyway, my subheadings are, the first one is, Are you listening to me? The second one is, Sit up straight. Number 3 is, Go to your room. 4 is, Clean up your room. That's a big one. Number 5 is, Don't be shy. Just go in there and say hello. Number 6 is, You've got to stay on top of things. And number 7 is, Be prepared. All right. So, number 1, are you listening to me? Listening. There is a huge difference between hearing and listening. Hearing is when the sound reaches our ears. Listening is something that you consciously choose to do. Listening requires concentration so that your brain processes meaning from words and sentences. Listening leads to learning. Edward Bowles is a humanistic writer. I guess he wrote 3 novels in the 80s, or 3 books in the 80s about the brain and stuff. And he says, we remember what we understand. We understand only what we pay attention to. And we pay attention to what we want. I'll say that again because it's wacko. We remember what we understand. We understand only what we pay attention to. and we pay attention to what we want. Interesting. Listening requires concentration and attention. Listen to me right now. Listen better to your teacher when your teacher tells you to do something. Listen more to published recordings for sound. Published recordings, not just any old YouTube. Listen to your peers more critically. You don't have to say anything out loud, but just listen more critically. And listen to your own sound. It's time to flip on your listening switch and analyze what's going on and what isn't going on with your own sound. Here are things that you can listen for and actually work on separately. Your core sound, of course, you can listen to see what a person's core, like what word you would describe for a person's core sound. Does it change while they're playing? You can listen for edge, brightness, high overtones, brassiness, however you want to say it. How does the performer use edge instead of volume, for instance? Listen for fuzz in someone's sound. Listen for pitch. Listen for tension in a person's sound. You can definitely hear tension on those high notes for some people. And listen for how much control a horn player has. Chances are the people who are actually making like CDs and stuff and professional recordings, we're going to hear people who are in control of all those things. So that's great, but it's good to actually listen to them anyway and see if you can separate those out. Listen first in others and then do a self-analysis and list your weaknesses. What do you have? Are you able to get edgy or not? Does your core sound weak and not powerful or something? Or is your piano super fuzzy? All that kind of stuff, right? Look at those weaknesses and look them in the eye and decide to do something about it. Imagine that you can work on different aspects of your sound separately and trust that you have the patience to do so. Patience is a very big one for all of us. I think that it seems like students don't have patience anymore, and that's something we all have to have. That is, are you listening to me? Number 2, sit up straight. Posture is so important. It aligns your body so that the airflow can achieve its maximum intake and exhalation. Tension is really important too, especially the lack of it in the upper body and the neck. Look in the mirror when you breathe. Breathe low. Breath should relax the upper part of your body, not create more tension. One of my favorite things to do in lessons, and I've probably done it with every camper at Kendall Betts in the past, has been to make people squat and play. It's really amazing what happens if you just kind of squat. If you not all the way down. I'll demonstrate. Let's see if I have to make sure I can see myself here. So you're just like you're playing basketball, kind of. You're like squatting like this, and you're a little bit bent forward, and everything's kind of loosey-goosey. And take a deep breath. Put that breath all the way down and blow some tones. I'm telling you, you will be surprised at how just doing that changes your sound. And the reason it changes your sound is because by squatting, you're allowing your body to go all the way down to that pelvic floor, that breath to go all the way down to that muscle. And that muscle is going to carry so much of the support that you need to play, so you don't have to use the support up here. Of course, that's not sitting up straight, but that's just an awareness of your posture. But and another thing I always associate with posture is rethink your hand position. You probably, after a while, we just put that hand in there and we don't think about it. Even I found over this past year that my hand position got so like lackadaisical because all I was doing was playing for myself here at home. And is your hand position tight? Is it producing the right overtones that you want? You can always move that around a little bit to find the sweet spot of your sound and everything. So that's part of posture too. Number 3 is go to your room. So under this heading, I would encourage you to change up the space that you practice in regularly. Don't get used to the same sound in the same room all the time. Change it up. Go to a bigger room where you're going to be more echoey one day. Play in a really dry room, and it's very revealing and sad. But the more you can mix it up, the more you'll realize you can do stuff with your sound. I know that whenever I get into a bigger room, I'm just like, oh, now my sound can actually go out, all over the place. And then, also put in the time in that practice. I said this before, but I'll say it again. Put in the time necessary to develop a creative and positive working relationship with your instrument. Become friends with your instrument and work with each other. And if the horn isn't going to move on this one, then you got to do something. Or maybe you'll learn that you can move the horn or something like that. Practice makes perfect. I'm not sure about that, but practice definitely does allow you to get to know your instrument, what it can and can't do, and how you might have to bend a little to create the sounds you like. So go to your room and practice, and think that practicing is working out the notes and everything, but it's also working on your relationship with that vibrating piece of metal in your hands. Number 4, clean up your room. Oh, yes.
One quick thing before we go on. I have a question asking if this will be available on a handout or a reference material later.
Yeah,
Um,
I have all the text on the handout. I'll give it to you later for
yeah,
sure.
okay, so that'll be in an email tonight then. Thank you for that question. We have a couple of other questions, but I'll kind of scatter them out through the end because you're on a roll. So we'll get to those in
Woohoo!
just a little bit.
Okay,
Thank you,
all
Pat.
right. Thank you, Elizabeth. All right, so let's see. We were just left up with go to your room. Now we're on to clean up your room. So this part is about all the things that in theory you can play or do and that you sound pretty good at. But seriously, honestly, can you play an E flat major scale in 16th notes where every note is exactly where it's supposed to be in terms of pitch and sound and articulation and dynamic? Great. Can you do it a second time in a row? Great. Can you do that an octave lower? Great. How about if we change the dynamic to fortissimo? You need to be in control of the sound on every pitch and not let the horn dictate what the pitch is. Don't just take what the horn gives you. It's like a messy room with a pile of dirty clothes in the middle of it. You can function fine. You can learn to walk around that pile of clothes as it grows, and after a while you kind of can ignore the slight dirty clothes odor that's developed. You can walk right past it and go to sleep and get up in the morning right past it and go on your day. But the pile's still there. And when guests come to visit you, miraculously, it disappears into the closet, right? When we perform on the horn, the guests are always there, and many of them, especially in schools when we're all judging each other, many of the people in the audience are looking for a way to find what's in your closet. So clean up your act. Take care of that pile. We all have one, and not literally, but figuratively. And so as you clean up your room this time, because we've all tried to do it many times before, try letting your attention to the sound of the horn be your driving force. Don't move the metronome up a click until you're getting the sound you want on every note, just not getting the notes. And I'm not talking about articulation. I'm talking about the ring, the beautiful sound we all expect on every single note. I have 3 ways to practice this. The first one is, everyone at Kendall Betts will be happy for me to say, is practicing Koprush. Yay, Koprush. I hated Koprush as a student. But play Koprush and listen. And actually, you can play the original Koprush or the many variations of Koprushes that Jeff Agrell has written. And those books are awesome. If you don't have them, you should get them. But when you play Koprush, go slow enough so that you sound great on every pitch, every note. Let the sound of the pitches be more important than the speed. Let the sound improve your technique rather than practicing technique separate from your sound. Put your sound into the technique, into the articulations. When you see a group of 4 16th notes, is the 4th one have as much energy and ring and excitement as the first one? Chances are not, because we ignore these guys whenever we see lots of 16ths. But we should always be thinking about these guys as they lead to the next one. Give them some direction what to do. But listen to the sound of your Koprush. A second way to practice to clean up your room is just to play scales and arpeggios. I know that sounds boring, but there are many scales and arpeggios that exist in the world. You don't have to just play major or minor, and you can find nearly any kind of mode or whatever anywhere on the internet. But can you really play your scales amazing? Are you in control of every note? Or are you letting the horn once again dictate the sound of particular notes or particular areas of your range? I remember as a younger student or whatever, I could play high and I would play scales, 2 octaves up to the high B and the high C and everything. But I realized later on that I was always playing like anything above G had this really tense, harsh sound, but dang it, I was getting the note, and that's all that mattered to me. But I realized later on that I don't know why I have to change my whole sound concept to play those notes up there. Why can't I, if I want to play them fortissimo, I'll play the whole scale fortissimo. If I want to play those light and flighty, I'll play the whole thing like that. So um, um, pay attention. Pay attention and play the sound that you really want. If you want to be great, you have to listen and clean up your act. Yeah, James. Yeah, oh, that was a good, nice segue there, Elizabeth, about James's talk after this, where he's going to talk about modes. The third way to do this is I call it listening to the subdivisions better, or subdividing for sound. And if you're a camper, you've probably heard me talk about this in a lesson or something, a class that we had. And just very briefly about that, when we think of subdivision, we usually think of rhythm, and we think that it's going to help us play everything more rhythmically, and it does. And we pull subdivision out when there's a tricky time signature or a tricky rhythm or something. But I'm talking about subdividing actually for listening to the sound, all the different sounds within a note. So if you have a quarter note, you can think of a quarter note. On the page it looks like one thing, and we just play a note, but it's actually made up of 4/16 notes, and each of those 16th notes has a job. And the first one is to make a great sound right at the very beginning. The second subdivision should sound just like the first guy or girl, depending on your note. And then the third one should sound like the second. It should also sound just like the first one. And the fourth one, often the forgotten child. It's like a mom is she has 3 kids, and the last one's just dragging along. We just don't put any energy in the fourth subdivision, or sound mostly. And the job of the fourth subdivision is to tell us exactly what the sound of the next note is going to start with. So it's really keying into every little aspect of it. And when you do this, you don't have to actually articulate all the notes. You just have to think about hear all the subdivisions and make sure that you're playing your air through the whole thing. If you take a phrase like the opening of I don't know, or the Strauss 1, and erase all the crescendos and decrescendos in that first line. I'm talking about the ba-da-da-da part. And then just try thinking of that all as a bunch of subdivisions. Like just playing that, and think about each one of those subdivisions having the exact same sound. I think if you can do that, you will really experience what blowing your air through the horn will feel like. But you're not thinking about it as just as blowing. You're listening to it as sound. And that's what I think we should be doing. So you can try that. Sometimes if you do that, the inherent musicality of the line just blossoms out without you actually having to do any crescendos or decrescendos. I don't think composers imagined that ends of notes would taper when we run out of breath, or our sound would change at the end of phrases. We actually have a duty to put our amazing French horn sound into every nook and cranny of a phrase. Every nook and cranny, because it's the horn. The composer hears the horn sound and imagines this horn sound all the time, and doesn't imagine it thinning out or anything like that. But once we do that, we can begin to use the subdivisions to define our ups and downs and our changes of timbre, like where we can save or where we really need to blow. Becoming aware of all of the subdivisions and the sound puts us way more in control. Next time you work on the Tchaikovsky 5 solo, Think of it in subdivisions. Ba da da, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. There's 6 subdivisions on that G sharp. What are you doing with those subdivisions? Are you sustaining some of them and then dying away? Are you stopping early? All that kind of stuff. Is someone trying to interrupt me? No. Okay. And so just think about that. Or, another thing from the Tchaikovsky Fifth Solo is the part that goes ba da da. It's at it's the next phrase ba da 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 da. And if you think about the subdivisions, how many D's do we actually play? Ba da da, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15 C sharp. Then we finally get to the C sharp. That's 15 subdivisions, and all it says, all Tchaikovsky put under that was a little crescendo line. But so where are you crescendoing? If you're aware of the subdivisions, you can decide, oh, I'm going to wait till here to do it, or I want to like crescendo this far with my volume, and then I want to add a little edge to make the end of the thing get further. But by being aware of the sound you're making on every subdivision allows you to be way more in control of what's coming out of your horn, and it also helps you repeat and do it the same way more than one time. Another place that comes to mind when I'm thinking about this is the very end of the Shostakovich 5 tutti, where we have to go bum 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 bum. Yeah, we've just been playing down, low, 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 low. We have to go way up to an A and a B flat if we're playing first or second horn. And that A before the B flat. Dun, 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 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Ba-da. There's 6 subdivisions on that A. What are you doing with that A? A lot of people play the front of it and cross their fingers and pray to God that they get the B flat after it. But if you think, I'm going to hold on to that A for 3 counts, and then on the 5th and the 6th subdivision, that's where I'm going to brass out a little bit more and get to the B flat, that's a plan, and that's something that puts you in control of that, rather than just crossing your fingers and praying to God that you don't step all over yourself in that thing. So using subdivision actually can really enhance your musicality and help you define what you really want to do. So those are the 3 ways that you can practice cleaning up your room: using copras, scales and arpeggios, and then subdividing for sound. Number 5. Don't be shy. Just go in there and say hello. Oh, my mom and dad used to say that to me all the time because I was a very shy person. But that just means walk right in the door with your sound. Do not hesitate. Do not practice holding your breath before you play. Join the vibration of sound. Start every phrase or note with a beautiful, resonant, and relaxed sound. Starting soft does not mean you can start with a thinner core or a thinner sound. It's still got to be beautiful. It's still got to be the horn. We have to represent. It doesn't matter what it is. A lot of us wait to the 3rd or 4th notes to ease into our beautiful sound. I don't know why we do that. We think it's like we're testing the waters or something, and then we finally get there. But think, I'm going to come in with my big beautiful sound, or whatever, my small beautiful sound, or whatever it is. I'm going to come in with my sound, and then I will sustain that sound throughout the phrase. That's how I'm going to start. I'm not going to find it midway through the phrase. 2 ways to practice that. Probably the most important one, I'll just talk about one because I don't want to go on and on and on. But that I really believe in, for every first note of any piece, or every first note of an orchestral excerpt, depending on what you're working on, you should have an internal count off in your head that incorporates a subdivision that you're going to be using when you play, and incorporates a life-giving breath every time, and that you breathe the same place, the same way every time you start something. It can be long, it can be short, but I think longer is better if you have subdivision. But it's just a matter of practicing. Decide, I'm going to count for 2 measures. I'm going to subdivide into 8th notes, and in the 2nd measure, I'm going to start breathing on beat 3, and try it out and figure out what it is. That can really help your sound just be there when you start playing. And I was going to say one thing and I just forgot it. That's okay. But the other thing is something that I've talked about with other classes before, and it's about a how-to breath. And how is the inhalation, and just starting like that instead of stopping right before it. Or else if you're going 1, 2, 3, 4, play, and you go 1, 2, 3, play, you're still stopping everything in the middle of it. 1, 2, 3. Take the whole breath to get that air all the way down, and just trust that your 2 is going to start the note right where it is. That will help you be less shy about the beginnings of your phrases. So don't be shy. Just go in there and say hello. People want to hear the French horn, for crying out loud. It's the best instrument in the world, right? And so we just have to put it out there. Number 6 is you've got to stay on top of things. This one's kind of weird, and I've discovered this on my crispy horn. But often when we try to make a really great sound on the horn, our first inclination is to bear down into the airstream, like reach in and pull out the heart of the note. And we try so hard, and when we do that, we're playing with a great sound that falls under the category of working hard. And here again, here's Fergus McWilliam again. Don't think of moving the air as if it were like lifting some sort of heavy... Oh, no, it's the same one I said before. But he talks about speed of the air. I'm not going to repeat that. I guess I have that twice. I think I had another Fergus quote, but I can't find it, and I'm just going to move on. I'm sure Fergus says something wonderful about that. But we shouldn't think of finding a great sound as working hard. Try easing off on your sound. Try spinning your air faster instead of blowing harder. Don't search always for the central part of each tone, because sometimes that ends up chopping the phrase in general. Try staying on the top part of every note, just on the half. Every note is this big, right? And we can play here or here or here or here. Try staying right on top of each note and just play the tops of each note and kind of float through a phrase. It's great in soft sections. The pavane is great to feel that. And feel the horn vibrate. It's a different vibration in your hand when you play like that. It's still pretty and it's light, but it's not like, oh, I gotta find that note. And then when you switch over to that, it's really exciting. But feeling the vibration and letting the horn take on a lot of the responsibility and just slipping across the tops of the notes. It's something kind of fun to try. I thought that it was going to make me sound really super sharp, but actually it didn't. It was mostly just a feeling of playing in the high part of the note. So don't worry about the intonation. It's just for the feeling of being on top of that sound and putting less energy and saving it for later, whatever. I use that also like in the second movement of the Glière Concerto. Oh, it's so beautiful. But if you just float across the top of that, and then when it gets like this, then you can switch your blow into that digging into the center of a piece, and it's even the contrast is even more exciting and noticeable to the audience. As a way to practice this, I would just practice descending. So, fa, mi, re, do. Start on D and just kind of float across the top of all the notes. Do it in every key. Ba-da-da-da-dum, ba-da-da. Then take a tune or a particular section that's supposed to be piano or you want to be lighter, and just try floating across the top of it. It's very interesting. It's a different blow. The thing that tires us out as brass players is playing the same way for too long. If we have to play loud for too long, we get tired. If we have to play soft for too long, we get really tired. If we have to play in the same range of notes, that's very, very tiring. Our aperture and our face needs variety to keep us alive. And so using a different blow where you're floating, that just changes the blow, and so it's easier to get back to the other type. It kind of gives you a break or something. It's like after you play something that's really soft, you get to play loud for a while. It feels so good. It just changes everything up. So let's see. So we're getting there. The last part I'm going to talk about is playing by heart. And this has a lot to do with playing with your sound. And your sound has to be your voice. And the music has to come from you and you have to love what you're saying. So many things can get in the way of music during performance. So you have to dig deeper and plan out things better so you're in control and able to actually tap into that. I'm going to suggest that you use memorization as a practice tool. It's not to play memorize, but just use it as a practice tool. It's a great way to really internalize music and hear it fresh and find a place in your heart where the music can come from in the performance. It's a different approach to learning and performing music, and perhaps a way to build confidence, and perhaps a way to reduce some of your performance anxiety. Learning something by heart, that's an expression we use. I know it by heart. We said that when we were kids, right? The Pledge of Allegiance. I know it by heart, And we learn by rote. That's another expression. Through repetition. You heard it over and over and over. The word rote comes from the Latin word rota, which is the word for wheel. And in this case, it means turning the wheel over and over and over until something becomes familiar and you know it by heart. Which back in the early days, they thought that the brain was in the heart. So it's so funny where that expression, know it by heart, is actually something about the brain. But they used to think that part of your brain was in your heart or something. But maybe there's some logic to that. Maybe memorizing is knowing it by heart. Turning it around and around inside until you actually love it and love it enough to share it with other people. So playing it by heart is not a path towards memorization, but a path to give meaning and love to what you're playing. The written stuff on a piece of music can distract us a lot. If I think about Strauss 1 and I sing da da da, we could all sing that or whatever, okay? We can sing it. And now if someone says yes, but now, Pat, you have to sing it with feeling. Okay, but I wasn't even thinking about that before when I sang it. But so I think, ba-da-da-dum, ba-da-da. That becomes less me. Suddenly, I'm a little self-conscious about me trying to sing something with feeling. It feels differently. Then someone says, okay, now you have to do the right breaths and sing it with feeling. So you're going, da 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 dee do. Here comes the breath. But okay, and that takes me further away from the song that I'm actually playing. And now they're going to say I have to use the right articulation on top of that. Oh my gosh, all of those things on the music take us further and further and further away of using our own voice. And so my advice is to memorize all of that. Don't just memorize the notes. Memorize how the breath feels. Memorize, sing it so that you love it. Locate the parts of the phrases that are special and interesting to you and remember those. And every time you sing through it or go through it, think, I love this spot. I love how this note turns over or something like that. You got to find little, I don't know what the good word, but touchstones onto where you connect with the music. And then think about direction and phrase goals and how does your sound get you towards your goals or how is it leading you away from your goals? And how does the articulation that you're supposed to use getting you towards or away from your goals? Change the articulation. If you really want to sing your song, who's going to care? I don't care. Change it. Use theory to describe what's going on in the phrase so you could explain it to another person, just so you know it well. So it goes up an octave and there's kind of a long note, and then it goes down a triad, and then it goes to the four and comes down, has a nice little doop-a-doo-doo at the end of it. That's the first phrase of Strauss 1. But that, just even putting those words on it makes it suddenly more interesting for you. Once you've got things worked out, transpose it to another key. Include all of those details and work it out. Now you're playing a variation of it. And once you play a variation of something, that helps you know the original again. So I could go on and on and on, but I'm going to say try memorizing stuff you play and really find the places where you love. And if you can't do that, a good sound will help you. But if you can really play with your sound, you're going to be smoking.
Wonderful.
How about questions? Any questions?
Yeah, I was going to say we have a few questions here.
Okay.
So the first one that we have is from Hannah, and they ask, how do you know when you have found your core sound? Can you just feel it? And then there's a follow-up question, but I'll start with that one.
I would say it's a vibration that you feel. You feel it in the horn, and you also, another great way to listen for the core of the sound. I learned this from Doug Hill a long time ago, is to listen. Imagine your sound wrapping around you and going into your left ear. We always hear with our right ears, and speech is developed. Our left ear hears vowel sounds, and our right ear hears consonant sounds, and our brain puts them together. So if you really want to listen for a sound and listen, feel a vibration in your left ear. Isn't that interesting?
I did not know that. That's wild, but
Yeah.
really cool to think about. I'm gonna have to try that after this session. Okay, great. So the second question that they ask is, you were talking about how different horns sound different with different people. How, and this is a big one, how does one go about trying to find a horn that is perfect for them? Huge question, but go for it.
Well, first of all, you got to take the horn into another room and spend some time alone with it. You're not going to be able to do that in a big room with 45 other horn players and different horn makers making. So if you're at a workshop or something, go try it. The Houghton horns, they're associated with this. They have this awesome room in their shop where you can go all by yourself. And they have a whole wall of horns, and you can just try any one you want just by yourself. So that's a great way to do it. But I would never buy a horn unless I'd spent like a week with it. That's my advice, is, and to know if it feels good, and if some things are easy and other things are the same, and if something's harder, is it something you can work with? That kind of stuff.
Really good advice. Would like to second that. Spend at least a week with the horn bit, especially. I think that's something that we all don't think about quite enough. But
Yeah.
next question comes from Carolyn, and they're asking, I've heard the spinning the sound suggestion before, but I have trouble understanding how to implement. I know it's not literal, but can you, or I'm sorry, I know it's not literal, but I can't get the right image in my head. Can you talk about spinning the sound a little bit more?
Yeah, when I think about that, it's just something that we just say and we just take that for granted, Carolyn. Don't it's like, oh yeah, sure. But if you imagine blowing a pin, what, a little pinwheel, and blowing across the top of a pinwheel and trying to keep the speed exactly the same, whether it's a fast spin or a slow spin, that's a good way to think about spinning your sound, because you actually can see something spinning. I've heard other people describe it as a blow against a candle, and blow the wick, I mean the flame down, and keep it at a certain height. And that allows you to learn how to control about spinning it. I think that spinning, when I think about spinning sound, I usually think about a smaller sound, and spinning it really, really fast, or a really high sound, because I know that in the high range, I hardly need any air to play a really high note. It's just like, it's all about the speed of it. And our aperture gets nice and small, and that creates the speed that we need. But it's mostly, for spinning, it's about keeping it constant, the constant speed that you want it to keep. That's how I would describe that. I hope that helps, Carolyn.
I think that's great. I really like that candle thing that you sent. We have a couple more
Yeah.
questions in the chat, but unfortunately, I think we need to move on in this session for today.
All right.
So if you have questions for Pat, I don't know if he would be willing, but you may be able to email him. Pat, would that
Oh,
be okay?
absolutely. For
Yeah, if you
sure.
have questions on this, go ahead and email Pat, and we can. I don't remember your email off the top of my head, but we'll figure it out.
Oh, it's just Patrick Hughes at austin.utexas.edu. Very, very easy. So or you can just look at the University of Texas at Austin to find me too. So that's
Okay.
very easy.
All right.
Yeah, so great. And I'll give the transcript of my talk to Liz later on when I clean it up a little bit, and then everyone can look at that afterwards.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Pat. This was an absolutely brilliant session. Thank you for doing this today, and we will start wrapping up for now.
It was my pleasure. We'll see
Thank
you
you.
guys all later.
Yeah. Thank you so much for attending this session of the 2021 online KBHC experience, an offering of Cormont music and our gift to the horn community. Please join us today at 3:30 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time for BAM! Spicing Up Music with Modes with Dr. James Nagus, who is a lecturer of horn at the University of Georgia, hornist with the Georgia Brass Quintet, and one of the most actively commissioned and recorded composers for horn music today. In the meantime, which is half an hour, but in the meantime, please check us out on our various social media platforms. You can subscribe to our YouTube page by searching for Kendall Betts Horn Camp. You can also find us on Facebook using @KBHornCamp and Instagram using @official_KBHC. Anytime you post about us or share something we posted, please be sure to use the hashtag KBHC2021. Finally, please visit us at horncamp.org for more information about our upcoming online and in-person offerings. Thanks so much for joining us today, and we look forward to seeing you next time. Bye.